So give us the point of view from New Jersey's 7th District. How is it looking right now, and what will make the difference, do you think, come November?
I think that the voters in the district are highly intelligent. It's a well-educated district, relatively affluent district, and I'm a moderate conservative, and I believe the best government is from the center out. I'm a member of what's known as the Problem Solvers Caucus, and I think in the new House there will be greater influence of those in the middle.
And what does that do to your position with respect to President Trump? Because he's not always seen as a centrist, I think it's fair to say. He's taken some positions that you agree with and some you disagree with. How do you run? Do you run with him? Do you run against him? Do you ignore him? What do you do?
I indicate where I've disagreed with him and where I agree with him. For example, I think we're doing a better job in fighting ISIS, and I give the administration credit in that regard. But I did not vote for the health care bill or the tax bill, and I signed a discharge petition regarding the immigration issue. And the constituents I serve want someone who governs from the center, and I believe those are my views.
And one of those issues, voting against the tax cuts, that's something that the GOP wants to play up in terms of being one of the reasons for a solid economy. So if you voted against the tax cuts, what's your strategy then? What will your messaging be?
My message is that voters to whom I report believe in government from the center. And regarding the economy is strong, but I think we have to make sure that it continues to be strong. I'd like to see a 3% growth rate. I don't think a 4% growth rate is realistic.
And how much of that will go into infrastructure? Because we have one viewer just shooting us a question. Governor Christie neglected New Jersey Transit for 8 years. How can you help find funding for New Jersey Transit and the Gateway Tunnel?
I've been a leader on the Gateway Tunnel, and Congressman Frelinghuysen, the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, has put funding in the appropriations bill for the Gateway Tunnel, and we have to continue to do that. And of course, it's the responsibility of state officials, including our new governor, Governor Murphy, to continue to work on the New Jersey Transit issue.
How do your constituents regard the trade issues that are percolating? I mean, we had just the president today tweeting that he agreed that people should boycott Harley-Davidson for moving jobs offshore. We have the Turkey financial crisis right now, even as we talk about it. This is President Trump's tweet, actually, about Harley-Davidson. How do your voters view these issues?
We are a free trade district and a free trade state because New Jersey's position in the world is based upon geography, and here on the East Coast we are free trade. I've always been a free trader. That is traditionally the view of the Republican Party, and I hope that we can return to free trade.
And how do you regard the president's mixing, if you will, of the trade issues with the sanctions issues when it comes to Turkey? Right now, as we have it, he's imposing higher tariffs on steel and aluminum from Turkey, specifically to get the release of this pastor from Brunson from Turkey. Do you agree with that approach?
I would hope that we could move forward to have the pastor released. And I don't know whether this complies with 232 or not, and that might be a result in litigation on that portion of the larger issue.
Has Congress been exercising sufficient check and balance on the Trump administration?
Certainly, I have tried to do that. I am the sponsor of the resolution in the House that was sponsored by Jeff Flake in the Senate regarding making sure that we protect our national intelligence agencies, and I certainly support the Mueller investigation, and I think the Mueller investigation should reach its conclusion, and we'll see what happens when that occurs, Sherry.
What happens when the president continues to tweet about it being a witch hunt? How does that undermine the credibility of the results that could come out of Mr. Mueller's investigation?
I am also the sponsor of the legislation in the House that protects that investigation. I was the first member of the Republican side in the House to call for Jeff Sessions to recuse himself in this matter.
We hear time and again that ultimately voters in November will look to their pocketbook when they decide how to vote. Do your constituents in the New Jersey 7th District feel pretty good about their pocketbook right now, or are they anxious about it? And will they vote based on that?
Certainly, economic concerns are always at the top of issues, but we want to make sure, David, that the recovery continues, and I am concerned that we make sure that we have a 3% growth rate moving forward.
The tax cut bill, in fact, capped the SALT deductions, which is one of the reasons that you voted against it. How are you trying to rectify that? And if you're elected again, what will you do next year?
I'll continue to work on making sure that there is complete deductibility of state and local taxes.
Does that mean a repeal of the tax cut bill, or is it adding amendments to it?
I would imagine it would be reform and not necessarily full repeal. Certainly, I don't want the corporate rate to go back to 35%, and I would like to see complete deductibility because that's been in the code, Sherry, since 1913.
So one of the issues that came up last week was Representative Chris Collins from New York, whom I understand has now suspended his campaign for re-election because of his being accused of insider trading. Is Congress policing itself sufficiently on things like this? I mean, in other parts of the government, like the executive branch, they would not be able to own or trade stock in their own name.
I'm a member of the Ethics Committee, and so I cannot go into details on that specific situation. I assure your viewers, however, that the Ethics Committee is the only completely bipartisan committee in the House, 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats, and we certainly act appropriately. Regarding the overall issue, insider trading is a terrible situation, and we should never permit that. And perhaps in the new term, we should have an ethics rule that you cannot serve on a board of directors if you are in the House of Representatives.
I believe the legislation has been introduced by Congressman Tom Reed and also Kathleen Rice on not banning members of the House from serving on boards of publicly held companies. Are you backing this legislation?
Absolutely. Tom Reed is a close friend of mine. He is a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus. He's the Republican lead on the Problem Solvers Caucus. I am in that caucus. I don't know the Democratic Congresswoman as well, but this is bipartisan, and I certainly favor it, and I will become a co-sponsor.
With the Mueller investigation proceeding as it is, despite what the president apparently would prefer, how important is the issue of Democratic control versus Republican control of the House in terms of investigations? If it in fact flipped to the Democrats, would you expect investigations of the president and even possible impeachment articles?
I can't speculate on what the Democrats would do. I think that we should support the Mueller investigation to its logical conclusion, and then we will determine what is appropriate. I think the new House will be narrowly controlled, either continued in control by the Republicans or perhaps by the Democrats, but I don't think either side, David, will have the majority that is currently the case. And that will embolden and empower those of us in the middle, because I think centrists will be more important in the new House than is the case today.